Okay guys, I'm going to show you how to color correct clips, and this is something I want you to start doing prior to editing or cutting them up or doing anything after you get your Final Cut profile created and your clips imported into your browser area. So I have two interviews here that I'm going to take a look at, this one with Jasmine, this one with Olivia. You know, they look decent. Both of them kind of have a little bit washed out tones to them. We could probably have a little bit better light, but how do we know for sure what that correction needs to be and how much correction to give it? Well, we're going to use this thing called a video scope to help us do that. And to get that video scope showing, if it's not already on your screen, you're going to hit Command 7. And then you want to make sure that this says Luma. So we want to click this little button right here. We don't want RGB, we want Luma. So this is really important because that's telling us about exposure, okay? And what this is telling us is this isn't too bad actually as far as exposure goes. This bottom is you don't want these lines going anywhere underneath this 0, and you really don't want things going way above this 100. So there's areas of this where as I move my timeline along that it obviously changes. So, you know, that's something to keep in mind too. If you suddenly had a big light change in your clip, you actually might want to split it. But overall, from start to finish, this is pretty similar. So we're going to go ahead and do just a couple quick things to this. So I have to go over here and click this triangle. And over here, I'm going to click on exposure because that's going to bring light and darkness into my stuff. So I'm going to try to get this area down here to come a little bit closer to the 0. And that usually happens over here. See how I just did that? And you don't do a ton, okay? So look what happens. It just makes her shirt that little bit more rich and darker right there, okay? I don't want to go like crazy because look what happens. So again, these are just really mild adjustments that I'm using this little meter right here to help me understand. And so I really don't want to go below the 0. All right, the mid tones will bring some light into the mid part of my shot. So if I look at that, that gives just a little bit more light in there. Nothing looks blown out, so I'm liking that. And then way over here, this is like the overall exposure, and this is kind of telling us that we're actually pretty well exposed. I don't really want to go crazy with that because I don't really want to be above the 100. If you were overexposed, you could actually pull your exposure down. We're going to go ahead and keep that there. So now, if I want to see how my changes look, I can just uncheck. So that's my before, check, that's my after. So let's do that again. Uncheck and check. So it just gives a little bit of richness to the shirt there. Now if I wanted to go into saturation, I could possibly add some extra improvements here. Let's take a look at what happens. If I increase saturation, not seeing, I'm going to go up a little bit here. That gives a little bit more warmth to the face. Okay, I want to be careful here how much I do this. I don't want things to go crazy. And just kind of seeing what the change, I'm not seeing a ton of changes there. All right, so now let's look at our before and after. So now we had that, and now we have this. I think that that looks a lot nicer, so I'm going to just go ahead and keep that. All right. So we say, I don't think we have to save or anything. I think it just does it automatically, but if we unchecked it, it would go away. So now I'm going to come over here to Olivia's clip and see how it says no corrections. Okay, so if I go back over here, this clip would have the corrections. So back over here, no corrections. We're going to start with exposure. We're going to take a look at the Luma. Again, we're pretty well exposed up here. It's just the darkness that we could work with a little bit just to bring down and give that richness to the sweatshirt again. Maybe just a little bit of the highlights. We don't want her face looking too white, and she is pretty well exposed, so there's not a lot of change I'm going to do to this here. I think it's the saturation where I could warm up her face a little bit, so I'm going to try that, although I'm not seeing a ton happening there on the shadows. So I'm going to try here with the mid-tones a little bit. And again, not seeing a lot of change there. You can go like this with a whole slider, but that can be kind of dangerous. So you don't really want to go crazy with that either. I don't want her face looking gray, so I got to be careful. See, but now, yeah, all right. So let's take a look at what the before and after. So she's kind of pale there, a little more richness to the color. The books are coming in more color. I like that. I'm gonna keep it. So, again, we want to not really fall below the 0, and we really don't want to be above the 100. And in some areas in this clip, we are above the 100. So that is indicating that we have a little bit of excess exposure. I don't know if we could really get that to come down. Let's see. It's not. Oh, I'm in saturation. Whoops. Let's go back over to exposure. To get that to come down, I'd have to be right there. And that is actually saying that that would be the proper exposure right there. So let's take a look at that again. So that I'm fine with that. So we have that kind of palish, washed out look versus this richer look. And then over here, we have this look versus this look. And I think that looks better. So take a couple minutes. The better you get at this, you know, the quicker it will go. Now, obviously, that you've made those changes, you can, you know, do your cutting and stuff like that. But again, you want Luma. Command 7 is the tool you use to get this Luma to show. You use this little meter here to pick it. And over here, this triangle and the color board. And we're working in exposure and saturation. The color gets really messy. I'm not really ready to go there yet. I don't really have any real expertise in that area, so I'm thinking we're safer right here. I will show you that you can actually use a color wheel too if you actually prefer. I'm kind of liking the other things so far, but this actually does do some pretty interesting stuff that you could play with. But again, you would want to be careful not to, you know, kind of over dramatically change things. And these are the same buttons you were already using. They're just doing it differently. Like this is the master, this would be the whole thing. So like, yeah, you just, so there are some different ways you can do this, but I'm kind of liking the color board myself. So all right, so now we should be able to get some more light into our clips. I really like to show you one where there's a lot of darkness, but okay, I'm gonna just